Good Monday morning! I am MPJ and you are watching FunFunFunction. I would like to talk a little bit about the word focus today. Not only focus in itself, but how we talk about focus. Focus is a very popular word in general, but especially in the software industry. Focus is a word that you can safely use because, well, everybody's gonna say yes and everybody's gonna agree. You can say, we should focus on these few things, and people will go, yes, we agree, we should focus our efforts on these few things and make them good. And this video is not gonna contend that at all. I absolutely agree that we should focus on just a few things and keep our products simple and not be distracted by doing lots and lots of things. And recently I've run into these situations where some people around me have said this, like, we should really focus on this. And I've agreed. I thought that, wow, yes, we should. But then I start thinking about it and I realize that doing the opposite of focusing is dumb. Disagreeing with focusing would be insane. Imagine someone at the meeting saying, we should focus, and another person saying, no, I don't think we should be focused. I think that we should be distracted and spread our efforts around like a million tiny things. So when a manager or, someone at a company says, we should be focused, they are making a very safe statement. And this is why you're going to find words like focus in the mission statements of big companies, because they are words and terminology that almost everyone agrees with. Saying that we should focus is the very opposite of controversial. The only way you could possibly be less controversial is to say something like, we should drink water. There happens to be a word for statements like these. They are called truisms. The Wikipedia definition of a truism is a statement that says something that is obviously true and doesn't offer anything that is new or interesting. So, if I say something like, we should be focused in my team, I'm not really contributing anything to the conversation because the team already holds this opinion. There is a simple check to find out if something is a truism. You just take a statement and you inverse it. And you check if the inverse statement is insane. For instance, collaboration, peace on earth, eat healthy. The sinister part about truisms is that they're easy to see that it's a truism once you start to look at it, but it's very easy to gloss over that and miss that something is a truism. Partly because you do agree with them and you are more friendly and less critical of statements that you agree with, but there's also a more subtle thing. Truisms often refer to things with high failure rates. What? What does that mean? Well, focus is a good example. Because focus is, in practice, incredibly hard to achieve. Focusing is hard even for a single person to do. You know this if you've ever tried to just sit down for a day and focus on getting a task done. You know it's hard, right? And that is if it's just you, a single person involved. Like if it's a team or even an organization, that's a fucking atrocity of a problem. So even though people they start out trying to focus on one or two things, they mostly fail to do that in practice. Which means that we around us have all these examples of people failing to focus, which gives the illusion that other people around you don't care about focus. When in reality they do, it's just that it's hard. Because truisms often refer to things with high failure rates. That means a person can say things like, we should focus, and still seem smart, even though they haven't really said anything at all. Okay, but if just saying focus is an unproductive way to communicate around these things, then what is a good way of communicating about these things? I'm going to propose a solution to this problem, but first we need to take a coffee. instead of focus, I think that we should talk in semantics of sacrifice. Okay, so I know that sounds a bit ominous, so I'm gonna explain what I mean by sacrifice. So let's say that you have a dream of writing a book. Writing a book takes a very serious amount of time to write. So you decide that this week you're gonna put aside some serious time to write. As soon as you get some space, you're gonna sit down and write. But the week goes by and you end up not writing anything. Turns out that your week is already filled up with stuff that you're already doing. Okay, but there has to be some waste, right? You sit down and you look at the week and you try to find some crap that you can get rid of. And you find like some hours of Netflix watching that is low-hanging fruit that you can get rid of. But you find that there really isn't all that much waste in your schedule. Most of the stuff that you do is good stuff. It's valuable. You started doing it for a reason and you've continued doing it for a reason. The horrible conclusion is that in order to write your book, you will have to remove something good from your life. And what's worse is that it's often tied to disappointing someone as well. For instance, you might have to call up a friend and let them down by saying that you can't go canoeing this year. Or it might be bigger, you might have to call your co-founder and say that you're withdrawing from the little startup that you two have been started creating on your spare time. Figuring out which part of your week is gonna go on the sacrificial slab, that's a very hard and unpleasant decision. And it's also quite a bit of unpleasant and hard work to do the actual sacrificing. Making the unpleasant call is often just the start of these things. You might have to dissolve a company, that's a lot of paperwork, or you have to cancel tickets and stuff like that. Getting out of engagements reasonably cleanly tends to be quite a bit of work. And this is often why sacrifices never gets made. And your week stays crammed with stuff and the book stays unwritten. Software products, they are a lot like this. We start out with a blank slate, we start adding features that the customer likes, but over time the code base becomes larger and more interweaved, and the user interface that was so clean from the beginning starts getting more buttons, getting more functionality, and becomes more and more complicated. And since we have to take all these intermingled things into consideration, adding a new feature takes longer and longer for every feature we add. Even just maintaining it and fixing bugs is taking longer and longer. But that's okay, we have more money now as well, so we start adding more developers. Having more developers, it does help, but as we add more and more developers, we start getting higher and higher management and communication overhead. So every developer we add gets a little bit less benefit for every developer. So there's going to be a point where the developer that we add actually makes development slower. This phenomena is called Brooks' Law, and it's documented in the excellent book, The Mythical Man Month, which is one of the best books ever written on software development, in my opinion. You can find it in the episode description. I think most software product companies, given enough time and success, they will reach this point, this dilemma. So most companies will, when they reach this point, probably see the problem. They will say that, okay, we are doing too many things. We need to focus on the things that bring most value. So they identify the features that are the ones that have the least amount of value. And they stop allocating resources to those things, but they don't actually remove them. They just kind of stick around. To actually sacrifice things, that would mean a lot of upfront work and dealing with the fact that a lot of users are simply going to be very pissed at you. Even if the feature that you are removing is incredibly unsuccessful, some of your users are going to be reliant on it. Even if they are a tiny minority, they might be hundreds or thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people that you are screwing over. I think that most people can, from a logical standpoint, see that it needs to be done, because this is a very small minority and they are causing a drain on everyone else that is not using the product, and it's messing up the cohesive whole that the product is. But in practice, actually pulling the plug on the life support of these features is very hard. First of all, this work is not fun in any way. Secondly, it's not very rewarding work either. You don't exactly see many people getting promoted for removing old shite from the product. Most companies have a culture that promotes people that ship things, and it's really not focused on rewarding people that remove old unsuccessful features from the code base. Inside of most companies, removing stuff is not the most career sexy move that you can make, and combined with the fact that it's not fun either, it tends not to get done. So the features end up still being there. They're just not getting any proper resources, so they're basically just left to rot. And that doesn't really work, because the features are still draining the organization for time. If you have a look at the paintings in the background on my wall here, they're out of focus right now. My face is in focus, and your attention is drawn to my face, but they are still there. So the features that have been down prioritized, they are on life support, which means that they don't cost as much as they did when they got active development, but life support is still pretty expensive. And the really sinister thing here is that this mountain of small things that are on life support that just trickles out little pieces of time and effort and energy from your organization, each one takes a little time, the mountain of those things is slowly going to build up, because there is no sacrificing going on in your organization, because your organization has not learned how to do that. So my main point with all of this is that focus without sacrifice is destructive. Something has to give. Just like you're weak if you're trying to write a book, a software product is a finite amount of space. It's a bit more bendy than your weak, but in the end, they are both finite. You cannot just keep adding and adding and adding things, so you need to find a sensible cohesion. And that means that you need to take out and sacrifice things that doesn't work in that cohesion. Today we have talked about the problem with focus. We talked about truisms, which is things that are just evidently true and that is easy to agree with, because the opposite would be absurd, such as collaboration and peace on earth and eat healthy or focus. And that truisms are hard to spot because truisms often refer to things with high failure rates, which gives the illusion that people don't care when in fact people just fail at them. We talked a lot about why focusing is so hard and why you need to focus because of the Mythical Man Month, which is a point of complexity and amount of people in a software project where we're adding another developer is actually going to slow down the process. And we talked about how focus without sacrifice is destructive because you leave around these things all over your working week or your organization that just sits there and rots. You don't spend a lot of energy on them, but they are still going to be slowly draining you, and this pile of things is just going to keep growing. And this is hard. This is really hard. I made this video partially because I myself struggle with it so much. To be honest, I think that it's actually only a very small part of the entire human population that actually manages to sacrifice things on a regular basis and optimize their schedules and what they are working on. And it's even harder for groups of people to do that together because you have to agree on what to sacrifice. So the amount of organizations that can do this is extremely small. But I believe that if you are a person that can pull sacrificing off as a habit, or if you're an organization as part of your culture, that is going to help you become immensely successful. One company that I believe does this very well is Apple. And I am convinced that it is a huge part of why they are so vulgarly successful compared to almost all other companies. No matter if you love or hate Apple, I think that this is a lesson to be learned from them. I want to leave you today with this very old clip of a Q&A with Steve Jobs just before he came back to Apple, where a person in the audience asks a question, putting Jobs on the spot, asking why Apple killed OpenDoc.
Yes.
Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man.
Here it comes.
It's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about. I would like, for example, for you to express in clear terms how, say, Java, in any of its incarnations, addresses the ideas embodied in OpenDoc. And when you're finished with that, perhaps you could tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years.
You know,
you have to watch this clip. It's just 5 minutes and it's so on point. I've linked it in the episode description. But before you do that, if you agreed with this video and liked it, please do share it with a colleague. And if you are that colleague, you have just watched an episode of FunFunFunction. I release new episodes like this one every Monday morning, 0800 GMT. Don't miss out, subscribe. I am MPJ. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.